Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on all of our social media outlets, our YouTube page, Facebook page, Instagram, pretty much any social media place you can find us there as Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. So make sure you guys follow us. And also, I'm going to tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. Don't cost you nothing, but you got to stay until the end of the episode to get that information. All right, cool. So we're going to jump into our next segment, which is called the product of the week. So as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and so we sustain ourselves by you guys supporting us in different ways. Definitely through you can send us some money through Cash App, or you can go to our Patreon page and support us there. But we also have some products that you may be able to buy. So this week product is one of our t-shirts that can be found at Deal to Heal Teas at myshopify.com on Shopify. And this t-shirt says, "Don't wish work," right? It says, "Don't wish work." So a lot of times we have our desires or what we think are, what we say is our desires. And we always say, "I wish I had this. I wish I had that." So the message is, don't wish for it, work for it. So wishing is only going to get you so far, which pretty much is nowhere, but in your brain and in your feelings, pretty much. So don't wish for what you want, work for what you want, put the work in to make things come to accomplish those things that you want to accomplish. So you can get that t-shirt, that inspirational shirt, at our website, Deal to Heal Teas at myshopify.com, or you can go to our website, which is up and running, dealhealfulfill.org. That's dealhealfulfill.org. That is our website. If you go there, you definitely find information on the podcast for booking me as a speaker and workshops that we're doing, as well as the link to get to our Deal to Heal Teas, where you can purchase our t-shirts, or our link to ebooksbyejames.com, which is where you can find my ebooks. That'll be the easiest place to go to find it. So that is our product of the week, and I definitely appreciate if you guys support us by purchasing a product to help us stay on the air. All right, cool. So now we're going to jump right in it because today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Mr. Nathaniel. How are you doing?
Man, I can't complain, man. I'm great. I'm doing good. I'm doing
Good,
great.
good, good,
So happy
man.
to be here.
I'm happy for you. That so matter of fact, let me tell you straight up at the beginning. I appreciate you being here. You could have been doing anything else, but you took out the time to be here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So we want you to know that up front.
Hmm.
All right, so let's jump right in. So do me a favor, introduce yourself to the listeners, and let us know who you are and what it is that you do.
So, what's going on, everybody? My name is Nathaniel J. Brown. I could say I'm a coach because that's the title that everybody gives what I do. But I'm a man humaning and bringing other people along with me. That's honestly the best way to try to put that is that I am a man learning how to master the human experience and bringing people along the journey with me. I love to sit in the space of listening because the more I listen, the more I learn. And the more I learn, the more I can apply. And the more I apply, the more I can master. And the more I master, the more I can teach. So it's a beautiful surrender to a very frustrating experience as a spiritual being, but it's a necessary scholastic experience to help us ascend to who we truly are.
All right, all right. So Nate, so we I heard you say you're a coach,
Hmm.
and I know that you have a couple of things that you do,
Yeah.
even right besides coaching.
Mhm.
But there's always a journey before the journey.
Right.
So before we get to the version of Nate who you are now, tell us a little bit about your journey. Like who was Nate before, and what was that journey that brought you to the space that you are now? That not
Mm.
only have you, been able to get some things under control and get your mindset where it is now for
Mhm.
you to be able to prosper, but also now reaching out to others and bringing them along that same journey.
Yeah. So my journey is interesting. I grew up in South Carolina, which if you went there today, you would still feel the relics of apartheid. Or you'd still feel the relics of slavery. You feel that that system crushing in, pressing in on you. So that system was there. That oppressive system was there, and it was in our home. It was everywhere. You couldn't get away from it. So I was a bubbly kind of kid. Yeah, I probably if you would have tested me for ADHD, you probably would have got that because that's most young black boys are hyperactive. Most of the time they get labeled, and we get labeled because people don't know how to deal with hyperactive black boys. But that's just the way I was. And right about 8 years old is when everything kind of shifted. About 8 or 9, right as I was going into my ninth year of life, I had an incident that happened that kind of shut me down. I was sexually molested by a family member, and I didn't know where to put that event, but that was the event that kind of turned Nathaniel at a 180. And until instead of being this bubbly, outgoing, more expressive child, I remember resorting to the inside. Like I didn't trust anyone around me. So that's when all of my mistrust started to happen, and the issues around my identity of who I was and all these other things. Growing up, I didn't have a meaning for the event. I just knew that I felt something wasn't right. I can feel myself getting angrier quicker because I didn't have the tools to deal with any of the
Mhm.
emotional upset. Again, something like that happens to a child that gets unlocked emotionally before its time, then
Right.
it becomes a trauma, and that trauma is what has been carrying me through my life. And I didn't realize what all those things were until I started doing the inner work. But through my young, I'd say elementary school years, I remember getting kicked out of class from being just mad, just angry. And I remember one teacher said, "I don't know what's gotten into you. I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to get it together." And I thought to myself, like, she has no idea. She can't help me because young black boy, just need to get it together. No one cares. So that idea that no one's going to hear me, no one cares, no one understands me, kind of carried me through my upbringing. So get me to my teenage years. Wasn't much of a party guy. Didn't really mess with a lot of people. Just kind of stayed to myself. Got into my early 20s, same thing. Started trying to date, and this is where things really started to unravel about myself. As I started to date, that's when I started to find out more about myself. That's when I started to listen to the feedback a little bit and realize that, hey, there might be something going on that's tethered to this thing back here. And I might need to take a look at it. But who do I go to? And I'm in the Black community here. This is taboo. You don't talk about it.
Mhm.
So I lived with this secret that I had vowed not to tell anyone, that I was going to take to my grave. And here I am, getting into my late 20s, and this stuff is affecting me. I've had night terrors for 30 years. I PTSD like nobody's business. Issues of mistrust, and I built a wall around. I literally fortified a wall around myself, and it wasn't until about, I'd say, 2016 where things really started to break open for me. I found myself in a space where I wanted to be able to get something, acquire something that I can give, because this is right
Mhm.
around 2 years after the birth of my 8-year-old right now, and I didn't have anything to really give, so I felt myself losing a grip, and I started slowly slipping into shame. I started slowly slipping into these dark places until something happened that caused me to it clicked, and I had an argument with my wife, and it was a silly thing. It was more of a meaning issue. Something meant more to her than it meant to me. And what happened was, I went downstairs, and when I get angry, when I get upset, and no one's around, I clean up. I put things in order, because order is what makes me feel safe. It really does something for my psyche. And I flip on a Tony Robbins or Netflix, right? I flip on Netflix, and the first thing that pops up is "I Am Not Your Guru" from Tony Robbins. Now, I had seen this title several times, but never really clicked on it. But for whatever reason, that moment, something was in me saying, "I got it. There's another expression of me that I need to find out about." And I had been doing like Bible studies, and I had been teaching, Hebrew studies and all the feast days. I did all that stuff, but none of it healed me. None of it was transforming me. I had a lot of information that I can give, and people love that, but I didn't have that transformative experience. But when I watched that show, when I watched that docuseries, and I watched how he engaged with people, and how well he listened, and how well he was able to hear what they were really saying, that was powerful to me. And I thought, that's what I want to do. That's me right there, the person standing in front of people, not in some pulpit, because I was, the prophecy, the prophetic people, all that stuff in the church. Oh, you're gonna do this, that, and the other. It's, for me, it's just vain words. Like, all right, I'll see, but I'll choose my own way. But just seeing someone stand as a heralder of truth, real truth, not perceived realities, but calling out people on feelings and facts, and making people make decisions. That was the power move. I was like, yeah, I got to figure that out. Well, not even a year later, after that event, that argument, and seeing that docuseries, I was in a stadium of 12,000 people with Tony Robbins, and we were just getting it in. And I was like, that's the transformative experience that I want to carry with me. And that's where I started opening myself up to expressing a want to help others heal what was in them, as I was also healing within myself. So fast forward to today, I'm loving being able to sit in the space and be that listener. I'm loving to be able to bare my soul and express myself from my pain, and listen and be able to heal as I'm listening to other people, because coaching isn't like one, it's not unilateral. It's speaking isn't unilateral. You're actually engaging with others on an energetic level, and they are engaging with you, and you are healing while you're helping. And
Mhm.
one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite Stoics, Seneca, he says, you want to know what a friend is all about, or a love of a friend is all about, then go love. If you want to receive friendship, be a friend. If you want to receive love, be love. And that's the journey now. How do I become love to another person. I think it's Heidi Baker who, when she's praying for someone, and she does a lot of work in Africa and some of the other really, really impoverished nations, she holds them and she says, what does love look like for this person? And that's sort of like what the mission is now. What does love look like? How do I continue to heal and get that stuff and unpack Nathaniel? And I'm doing therapy and all that stuff myself so that I can be a brighter light for other people.
All right. So you said a mouthful, and I'm definitely gonna go back and hit on some things that you mentioned. First of all, definitely as a speaker myself, and also as a preacher, one of the things, my prayer is always, before I get up to speak is, speak to me and then through me. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying as that healing. Like, even as you're delivering your message, that message is coming to you first.
Yep.
So
It's me
sometimes
first.
you don't even realize, what you're going to say, or how what you're going to say is going to impact, because you're speaking it, and as you're speaking it and impacting the audience, you're impacting yourself. It's like, oh, did I just say that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I find myself, even with the podcast, since I started the podcast, I will go back and listen to, some of the old episodes, and even listen to myself, and even some of my replies, and be like, wow, let me write that down. You know what I mean? Because it was in the moment. And even in the moment, it's like I'm speaking to me too.
Right.
So that's one of the things, the blessings of being a speaker, and definitely being able to touch others' lives and speak into others' lives. And I had a somewhat similar, I guess I could say, to the experience that you had with Tony Robbins. With me, it was Eric Thomas. And so I was going through a period of my life, and I was like, you know what? I need some inspiration. I need some motivation. I went to YouTube, and I was looking up another person who I knew, and I looking up that person. I was watching a video that person had did on his network, and I'm like, okay. So when it was over, I said, well, let me see who else is on here. And so I'm scrolling through, looking at the different, people that they had on there. And out of all the people I seen, the guy who I originally went there for was African American. And out of everybody, as I'm scrolling down this long list, it was only one other African American person that was on there, and that was Eric Thomas.
Wow.
So I said, well, who is this guy? And definitely that one click have definitely changed my life, with going down that rabbit hole of seeing who he was, and then looking at people that's connected to him, with David Shands, who I follow, and Jeremy Anderson, who I follow, and just things like that, and being opened up to this whole array of new people that I never heard of. But it started with hearing his voice. You know what I mean? And hearing him speak, and it was like, all right, I that's that same kind of transformation is like, like I now, mind you, I had already been preaching, I already been speaking, but it was just different. Like, this moment was different, and it definitely made a difference in my life. But I want to go back to something else that you said, and just talking about openly about what had happened to you with the molestation and those things. And I definitely want to thank you for being vulnerable and for being open, because I one of the things that I want to do with this platform is to make it okay and make it normal to talk about the things that we've been through. And that's why I said, we're healing, bringing healing to all areas of our lives, wherever we need it. Because it may not be everyone's experience, but it is someone's experience.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And I know myself, I haven't been through everything, and neither do I want to go through everything. And so I'm always looking for someone whose story is different than mine, to bring them on. So I definitely appreciate you, even being open about that, because now that opens up the door for other men, especially Black men, but other men in general, to have the conversations, to be able to say, hey, that happened to me too. You know what I mean? And even those who didn't happen to, like you said, in the Black family, a lot of times it's taboo. So sometimes, like, hey, it didn't happen to me, but I know it went on in my family. You know what I mean? And so let's talk about it. Let's pull the sheets back and be like, hey, it's going on. Let's address it, so this don't continue to the next generations. And so I definitely appreciate you, even being open to share your experience and share your story. And so we're gonna fast forward back into the speaking part of things. So I came across you, and I always go and check my speakers out, check my guests out before I have them on.
Mhm.
And I was looking over your three pillars, right? Your three pillars, and I wanted to talk about that because
Mhm.
I definitely uh, um, could uh, recognize or relate. That's the word I want to say. I definitely could relate to it, to your pillars, and I think that those are going to be very helpful for our audience. And so,
Mhm.
one of the first things that you talk about is changing your mindset, right?
Mhm.
And you equate that to the law of responsibility,
Mhm.
and that's one of my core values
Mhm.
is responsibility, and I definitely
Absolutely.
preach that and teach that, especially when I'm dealing with young boys, right? Which was my core audience for some time with my mentor group,
Mhm.
and even now going into the schools is boys and girls, but
Mhm.
definitely a message that I want to get to young boys is that
Mhm.
sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
And because you're going to be responsible for somebody. You're not
Mhm.
only responsible for yourself, but if you continue to grow up and to be a man, you're going to have a child one day. You're going to have a family one day. You're
Yeah.
going to have a wife one day. And even if not, you're still going to do something, whether it's a job or a hobby or whatever, but
Mhm.
you're going to be put in a position where you
Yep.
are responsible for the outcome of that position that you hold.
That's
If
right.
you're a father, you're responsible for that child. You're a
That's
husband,
right.
you're responsible for that marriage. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
And so that's definitely one of my core pillars that I talk about is that being responsible. So when you're talking about the law of responsibility and conveying that message to your audiences, what is something that you know speak on, to be able to get that point, drive that point home to where they can say, oh yeah, this is important.
Right. So I pull some of my information from some of the esoteric texts because I like to pull from everything.
Mhm.
I'm a connoisseur of information because I feel like no one thing has all of it in it. Otherwise, what the heck are cultures for? What the heck are all
Right.
these different civilizations for? What are all these other expressions for if they don't have something of value to offer? So
Mhm.
when I think about mindset and I think about the law of responsibility, I think about it in this light. We are responsible for what we think. We are all responsible for what we think. And we are responsible for what we feed into the mind. The reason why I say feed into the mind is because one of the seven hermetic principles, one of the first principle is that all is mind. The universe is mind. That's all it is. Everything is just a matrix that Wallace D. Waddles say it's a thinking stuff, and you can think in this stuff, and the thought in this stuff creates a reality, right? So that's the universal principle of the mind. So whatever you set your mind in front of, or what do you set in front of your mind, that's what you're going to feed it. And whatever you feed that mind, that's what it will express through the form of thought. And then the thought becomes a behavior, and the behavior becomes a condition, and the condition becomes a lifestyle. And the reason why I teach it that way is because if we can get the mindset part right, if we can get what we are feeding that ever consuming thing that is the all, whatever that is, it's consuming experience. As a matter of fact, if we take it over back into the Hebraic understanding, there's an understanding of this allness as a consuming entity, right? That what they call God is a consuming fire, right? And it just simply means the word consuming. It literally is the word for the stomach. Matter of fact, it says that the God is alive, right? The living God, right? So the word live or live is the word chai in Hebrew. It means, but it's a agricultural biological word. So it's more of a biological word when it comes into the human experience. But it's a stomach. It's actually the same word that represents the stomach in Hebrew. And the purpose of your stomach is to create with an acidic sort of environment that would be fire because acid
Mhm.
burns. It will churn up whatever you chew so that it churns it up so that it can go into your bloodstream and you can extract the nutrients from it. So in order for God to be a consuming fire, this entity has the ability to always be in the space of consumption. Things are always going into it. So there's this ever feedback loop into this mind that we're always downloading and uploading things from and to. And that's what I teach people, like whatever you put here, you're going to upload into your reality. And that's why I teach it that way. So yes, the universal principle of all is mind is the first thing. You get the mindset right. You take responsibility for what you're feeding it. If you're feeding it TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and the news and CNN and Fox News and all that stuff, and you can tell what someone's feeding their mind by what's coming out of their mouth, right?
Mhm.
Because the stuff that's going in here is coming out here. Look at a child. They're the perfect example between ages of 0 and like 8 years old. They're the perfect example of the mind, the subconscious mind. And it's ever consuming and it's always repeating the program you put in it. So you put a child in front of a laptop or an iPad or a cell phone or a television, and you'll see this blank stare, right? They're just looking like dumbfounded. What it is they're not dumbfounded. They're in theta brainwave state. And what they're doing is they're downloading information into their space. And when they start talking, you start hearing what they've been watching. They go
Mhm.
outside, they start playing Power Rangers. Everybody wants to fight over who's the Red Ranger and the Black Ranger and the yellow and the pink, right? They've already associated an identity based on their mind. They took responsibility because the responsibility is your ability to respond. They took responsibility for what they put in the mind and they acted it out. So that's why it's so important for that first pillar to have a well-established footing.
Yeah, yeah, and that goes to one of the things that I always say. I always tell people, guard your gates, right? Guard your gates, because the gates to your mind, the gates to your heart, you have to guard them. Whether
Yeah.
it's the what goes into your ears, what goes into your eyes,
Mhm.
what you see, what you hear, what you speak. Because even with what you speak,
That's
when you're
right.
speaking it, you're hearing it at the same time. So
Right.
you got to even watch what you're saying to yourself as well as others. So you have to guard your gates, because all of that, again, like you said, all that information is being taken in, even in your subconscious, when
Mhm.
you're not even paying attention
Yep.
to what you're paying attention to. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
Like your mind never shuts off. And
That's right.
you think about people when they sleep, and sometimes like, oh, I couldn't sleep. My mind, you're having restless nights because your mind never shuts off.
Yeah, to
You know
shut
what I mean?
off.
Your body
Right.
shut down, but your mind never shuts off.
Sure
It's
doesn't.
continually processing, and that's why a lot of times when you have dreams, your dreams are made up of sometimes things that happen during your day. And it's
Absolutely.
like, hey, I seen this person, I seen this, I heard this, and then it shows up in your dream because your mind is constantly processing
That's
this
it.
information that
Yes.
you're continually taking in. So
That's
yeah,
it.
I like that. I like that. Another one of the things that you deal with, and definitely coming from the responsibility side of it, is leadership.
Mhm.
And those definitely go hand to hand, because
Mhm.
I always tell again, going back to the young men that I speak to,
Mhm.
especially my sons, I always tell them, you have a responsibility. And when you become responsible and you gain respect just by being responsible,
Mhm.
because you become a person of your word.
That's
And
right.
once you become a person of your word, then people know that they can trust you and they can believe in you. And not only
Mhm.
that, they can follow you.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so that's why leadership kicks in that. And so
Mhm.
when you're talking about leadership, and you equate it to the law of consistency, which
Mhm.
is a whole nother thing, right? Just by itself,
Mhm.
what is it, something that even speak in that space,
Mhm.
to get that point over? Because I know consistency, one thing I've learned,
Mhm.
especially doing the podcast, you
Mm.
know what I mean? Like that consistency, you got to be there every week, and
Yeah.
people start to look for, like, hey, you said
Where's
you're
it
gonna
at?
be there every Wednesday, you know what I mean? On Wednesdays, they looking for it.
Yep.
You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? And so even if they don't watch it, even if they don't listen to it on
Right.
Wednesday, they still expecting it to be there.
That's right.
And so that's definitely something I learned with the consistency, even on this journey.
Mhm.
But in your own teachings and the own values that you teach, what is the law of consistency, and how does that equate, in our everyday lives?
So leadership, a lot, and there's such a lot of talk around, especially in the corporate world, around leadership. And what I always thought it was just being able to tell somebody to do something and they obey in the command, right? So
Yeah,
it's completely dictatorial. It has
right.
nothing to do, no empathy. You don't care about the person. Just get this done, and you do it my way. And if you don't do it my way, then go away. Just like
Mhm.
it's very dismissive and it's rude. It's not cool. But when I talk about consistency in leadership, I'm talking about setting up a discipline. And in the corporate world, they call those systems. But setting up a discipline that you will act and behave from, that others will end up following, because whatever you're disciplined in, that's where you're leading. So a drug dealer is a really good businessman, but his discipline is causing him to lead people in a different way of business and a different way of living, so they get a different response from what they're giving, and they will consistently be getting that response. The same business principle you take over into the investment world, you take over into the sales world, you take the same principles, and you now are leading an entirely different team, and you don't have to do so with violence and at the barrel of a gun. But when I talk about consistency, I like to invite people to get in touch with that one thing that you're doing that produces a positive outcome within yourself, that if you gave it to someone else, it would also produce a positive outcome. And that by giving it to someone else, it's not that you're, hey, take this because I think it'll help. It's that, hey, watch me. Watch me as it's Paul. Follow me as I follow Christ. That's how you lead. You lead by example. And follow me as I follow the Christ, the Christos, the anointed thing, that thing that is within all of us. That's the hope of all things, right? That's what we call it. So when you're in a discipline, like my discipline is, I must do some sort of exercise daily, something, whether it's adaptive resistance. I used to be a personal trainer, so I kind of know how to manipulate the body a little bit, or whether I get to the gym and I do a workout, whatever that is, I'm going to do something every time. And then what happens is, as you do it, people are like, hey man, you keep going at the spot same time, where you going? I'm going to the gym, man, I need, and you'll hear when they know they need to be led, man, I need to be doing the same thing. That's how you know you're leading. You don't push something on them. Say, look, whenever you're ready to do something, let me know. And that kind of thing is subtle leadership. You know where they are, but you're not pointing out their dark places. You're not pointing the finger and saying, you need to do this, that, and the third. No, find that discipline. Find that thing that's within you. I don't care if it's you reading every day. I don't care if you sit and meditate every day. I don't care if your discipline is preaching. Your discipline is going to church and getting involved in community. Your discipline is community service. Your discipline is doing things with nonprofit organizations. Whatever that discipline is, somebody's watching. Somebody's always watching. Look on, all you got to do is pull up Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and just look at the posts and look at the videos that people are putting up on TikTok. And they're all cell phone camera stuff. Someone's always watching. And when you know that, you carry yourself differently, and whatever you're doing disciplined, that's where you're consistent. And that law of consistency is spilling out all over your environment. Someone's always taking up something you've dropped behind, some breadcrumb, some cookie crumb, something of yourself, something of your discipline, whatever it is. Could be positive or negative. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but it will be. And you're now leading them in that way. And the word lead literally means to transport. It means to take something or someone from one place and put it in another. David says in Psalms 23, he leadeth me where? Beside still waters, right? So being led beside still waters and being led into green pastures means that wherever you are, the waters are not still. Wherever you are, the pastures are not green. So you got to be willing to trust the shepherd enough, whatever that shepherd is for you. I don't care if I don't care if it's Yeshua or Buddha or Krishna or whatever. I don't care. You find that thing, you connect, but you take that light in front of you, and that disciplined one, because that's why the disciples were called that. They were called the disciplined ones of the way, and because Yeshua was called the way. And you are now given the responsibility to say, hey guys, over here, the green pastures are this way. Hey guys, over here, this is where the still waters are. And being able to be consistent enough for people to trust you, to follow you there. That's when you know your consistency is at an all-time high, and that's when you know you're being the kind of leader that people want to follow.
Yeah, and I always say I learned it from my old pastor, but it's definitely still something that I use today, which is when you talk to leaders or future leaders, is the fact that you should always be leading and feeding. Right, you should be always feeding your spirit, always learning something, always gathering information. But not only are you gathering it for yourself, but then you should be passing that information to someone else. And I always say when we talk about our circles, a lot of times, like, you don't want to be the smartest one in your circle, or, whatever that is. And I would say, well, if that's the position that you just happen to hold, then that's what it is. So
Right.
you do want to be the smartest one in your circle, but you also need to have another circle that
There
you're
you go.
learning from. You know what I mean? So you don't necessarily want to leave that circle, because if you're the leader in that circle, then you're responsible for giving them the knowledge that they may not have. So yes, you do want to step outside your circle to get to a circle where you're being fed, where you're gaining knowledge, where you're gaining wisdom on whatever thing that that it may be, but then also that you're staying in contact with your lower circle to be able to feed them, to bring them to where you are. So again, like you said, on that same journey of leadership, like, okay, you're trusting me to lead you somewhere, but I'm trusting someone else to lead me.
Me
You know what
somewhere.
I mean?
Exactly. And that's the symbiotic relationship. There you go.
And that
That's
consistency
beautiful.
continues in that circle of life, if we want to call it that.
That's it. And I'll add this. I have an acronym for leading, right? So the leading acronym is LEAD: listen, educate, assess, direct. Right? That's my acronym, and that's how I teach it. Listening, being an empathetic listener. That's a leader. Being able to detach your meaning from a thing to understand what something else means to another person. Education is not about what you learn. It's actually about what you're willing to unlearn. So that, because the word educate means to extract out of, it means to take away. So what is the exchange happening there? And then being able to assess things. That's the A. A is assess. Assessing things that you value. Andy Hargreaves, he's a professor of research at Boston University. He says, on assessment, measure what you value. Don't value what you can measure. See, we can measure likes and follows and analytics and all that stuff, but that's not what we should be. That's not our value. That's not our core value. Measure what you value. I value righteousness. I value long suffering. I value patience. I value love. See, these are core things that strike the heart. And then from there, you can direct people into the direction of the way they want to be, who they are. Once you get that core value in place after that assessment process, you can start moving them and start really pushing them towards that transportation thing. You start pushing them towards those still waters, the green pastures, the bigger circles, the more influential crowd spheres of influence. So yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I don't know how much of a listener you are to the podcast, but if you know, I love acronyms, so I'm just telling you right now, I will be using that. I give you credit the first couple times.
Let's go.
I give you credit the first couple times, but please believe me, I will be adopting that into my knowledge bowl. Okay?
Do it, man. Do it.
So I appreciate you. If nothing else, I got that part out of it.
Dang right.
So the last thing we want to talk about is this last principle that you talk about, which also I've been learning in my journey lately, which is perseverance, right? And you equate it to the law of resilience. And just thinking back in my own story and some of the things that I've had to overcome, and even some of the goals that I've been able to accomplish, there was some persistence in there that it took, that, even when it don't look like it's going right, even when it don't look like you're going to reach the actual goal that you're aiming for, but yet having that persistence to keep on going. So even when we talk about, the podcast I mentioned earlier, I'm on my third season, but I'm definitely a little over maybe a year and a half now, into it. And when people think about it, like, oh, monetize and YouTube, and all of that, and all this, things like that. And it's like, well, just transparency up until now, we on episode 84. I ain't got no money. What I mean? I'm not monetized. I'm not, all these things are not coming in, but yet I have to be consistent. I have to be persistent in order to keep on going, to be resilient, not necessarily, because that wasn't really the goal in the first place. The goal was to get the message out, and to build a platform where people can come for healing. And we're doing that, but it also takes some perseverance and some to consistency to keep on going, to make sure that, no matter what, we keep getting this message out. So when you're talking about the law of resilience, that definitely adds into that same that same bowl. You know what I
Mhm,
mean?
mhm.
And so when you're teaching that, that principle, give us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So when I talk about resilience and I talk about that perseverance aspect, I talk about it from the standpoint of the people that we look up to, the billionaires, the millionaires that we look up to, the lifestyles that they are able to produce for themselves. What you'll find is everybody will be okay with the first thing they see. It's like it's like an Instagram filter. It's like you actually think
Mm-hmm.
that's what people look like with most of the people who use them. You actually think that's what their lives are like. No, that's a snapshot of a movie, and that movie has behind it directors and actors and characters, and there's a set, and people got to put stuff together, and stuff breaks down, and all that stuff is the resilience part. That's the stuff that makes the man, that makes the woman, that makes the being.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was I was reading an article not long ago in Inc magazine, or Inc.com, and I was looking at like the top 25 most successful billionaires and millionaires in the world. And one of the things that stuck out at me was the guy Dyson, who made the Dyson vacuum cleaners. He basically pioneered this fleet of vacuum cleaners that are bagless, and he tried. It was crazy. He tried to build this one prototype 5,100 some odd times, over 5,100 times. He tried this one prototype. It took him that many times to get one to sell to the American public. And now look, he. I mean, like when you read his story with the stuff, the struggle that him and his wife went through with finances and stuff, bankruptcy after bankruptcy. Like he was willing, he believed in that thing so much that it was a knowing. It wasn't just a belief. It wasn't just like, oh, I think this might work. No, no, no. This wasn't pragmatism. This was, I have something. There's a dream. There's something, and I know this is going to work. It's Henry Ford asking, "Hey, there's an 8-cylinder engine in this factory.
Mm-hmm.
Make it." Right? It's Dyson saying, "Hey guys, there's a bagless vacuum cleaner in this factory. Make it." And I don't care how many times you got to do it. You do it until we find out how to do it. And he tried 5,000 until one came. And that right there, and the first line after I scroll back up, because I kind of scroll down, I scroll back up, but the first line on that whole article was that the thing that makes these men and women the most successful in the world is that they are absolutely resilient. And resilience means to recoil. It means to bounce back. A firearm is useless without its recoil spring. I was actually talking to an officer today while I was getting my oil change, and he was saying, I don't go to gun shows because there's always some sort of accidental misfire. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, what if they just made a rule that you can't have the recoil spring in the firearm before when you bring it into the building? There would be no accidental misfires, because without a recoil spring, the slide can't come back into place for a projectile to shoot out again. Now that's a principle, because to recoil is to bounce back. But what do you want to bounce back to? You don't want to bounce back to a jackass, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that. If you're being the type of person that people really don't like to be around, and I used to be that person. I mean, like I probably still am that person. I'm an introvert. I'm quiet. I'm isolated. People don't know how to do with me because I don't feel like talking to nobody. I was like, yeah, your stuff isn't that interesting, but okay, you do you. But if you're that kind of person that just kind of puts off everybody all the time, then you might want to reassess that. But the idea of resilience and coming back is, what do I want to come back to, and what values do I want to still be there when I come back to this place,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there are three. I call these three pillars within resilience. All right, so we have respect, we have reconnaissance, and we have repentance. And this is how this breaks down. Respect is two words. Respectere means to look again, right? So it means to see it again. So that means you take the issue, to take whatever you're doing, like Dyson, and you want to turn it 5,100 and some odd times before you get the right set of circumstances to get the right vacuum cleaner. You want to turn the light bulb around 10,000 some odd times and say, yeah, okay, now I found 10,000 ways that it doesn't work, until I found one way that it did, and that's the one that sells. Right? So you want to be able to look at things from different perspectives. It's like a Rubik's cube. When the Professor Rubik's, he was actually made it as a puzzle to help people figure out puzzles. But when he made it, it was so that you had to do so many He played with that thing thousands of times before he solved it once. And that was just one. And I forgot how many different algorithms they are, but that's just one of them. It's several of them, too many to count. And it's turning this thing all over the place so you can see where everything is. And then you can manipulate it how you want it so you can get your desired outcome. That's respect. Reconnaissance is a military term. It means to re-know, reconnaissance, to again be with the knowledge, right? So nascence would be gnosis. So reconnosis. And when something goes on, when they have a mission or some sort of mission in the military, they do a debriefing. They come back and they look at the intel, they look at the data, and they say, okay, so how can we do this better? This is reconnaissance. This is you reconsidering what you think you already know. And I think it's Joseph Campbell that says, hey, it's not what we don't know that gets us into trouble. It's what we know for sure that isn't so. And that's a powerful statement because most of us are so sure of everything, and we're not even aware of what we're unsure of. And it's what we know for sure that's getting us into trouble. So reconnaissance is you reconsidering, hey, what do I think I know about this? And what questions can I ask that would lead me deeper into a better stream of data, right? So that's all intelligence is. It's just you selecting a stream of data that you're gonna engage with. And then there's repentance. Repentance is not saying I'm sorry for what I did. I'm not talking about that vain apologies and empty stuff like that. Repentance is another military word from the Greco-Roman era, and it means to make an about face. You make a 180. You kind of flip the opposite direction, and you go back towards where you came from, where you were, who you truly are in the first place. And that's where you start having to go back into your inner child to bring that thing into homeostasis. So you go back to the dream, you go back to the goal, you go back to the vision. Got to go. That's why they call it going back to the drawing board, because that's where it all started. That's where you put your sweat and your blood on the page, and like, I got to figure this out. I got to write this down. That's repentance. It's not, oh man, I messed up and I'm sorry. No, 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 no. Repentance is, okay, this isn't working. There's a better way. I know there's a better way. Let me go back to the drawing board. Let me go back to the source of this goal, this dream. Sometimes you might have to go into a meditation and do a visualization and see it again and turn it around. But that's repentance. You're returning back to the original idea so that you can move forward. So respect, reconnaissance, repentance. Basically, in practical terms, when I teach it to high school students, it's re-see, re-know, redo.
I like that. I like that. And I know one of the things when I'm teaching on repentance, which is something that I think about, is not just, I say you have, it's acknowledging, right, and then it's I'm making amends, right. So when you repent, like you said, it's not just saying, hey, I'm sorry. Okay, that's part of it, because that's acknowledging that you did do something wrong, or that something didn't turn out the way that you wanted to be. But not only after you do that, but then now you got to put in the work again, going back to that situation. How can I make amends with it? How can I make it right?
Right.
How can I correct it?
That's
So
good.
it's not just apologizing, because that ain't
Right.
gonna do nothing.
That ain't gonna do nothing.
That ain't gonna do nothing for nobody.
I'm gonna tell you right now, Ernest, I never apologize. And here's why. The word apology, this is where we get apologetics from. It means to make a defense for. And if I behaved in a way that was offensive, I did it. There's nothing to defend. So what I do is I ask for forgiveness. And when you're willing to just say, please forgive me, you're taking responsibility for the action that you did that upset the meaning in someone else. Now, you can't take responsibility for their meaning. You can only take responsibility for your behavior. And if you behaved in a way that may have caused someone to be upset, may have caused them to look at you in a slighted way, then you can make amends. And that's what you're talking about, making that reconciliation. You can refriend that moment by saying, I know I behaved in a way that you don't agree with, and I'd like you to forgive me. So what you're asking is, I know you have meaning here, but I want you to detach your emotions from this event so that we can lift the burden here together. So that's what forgiveness is. It's you saying, change the meaning of this for a moment so that you're not so emotionally attached to this, so we can separate ourselves from this event. And when you do that, you unburden yourself and you unburden another person, because you're not holding them hostage to something that meant something to yourself or them. So I never say I'm sorry, because it doesn't feel authentic. I always
Mhm.
say, forgive me. And that
Mm.
puts me back in the seat of responsibility for my behavior. And then that now leaves your meaning to you to deal with.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well, let me make the announcement again. I'm gonna be using that too. Okay, just so you know, right? So one of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of is this mission called the Forgiveness Mission. And
Mm,
what we do, we have virtual workshops
mhm,
every quarter of the year, where we talk about forgiveness. We talk
mhm,
about forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others,
mhm,
forgiveness and wellness, as well as adding to some other things that we have
mhm,
that we're adding on
mhm,
to the platform. And we started last year and went well. We started at the beginning of the year. We just did one event and went
mhm,
well. We was like, you know what, we got to do it more often.
mhm.
So we started doing it every quarter.
Nice.
And we've been doing it ever since then. And that's the forgivenessmission.com.
Nice.
Where
Okay.
people can look into that. But
Mhm,
I'm one of the presenters. That's
mhm.
why I said I'll let you know now. I will be using some of that.
Use that
Um,
joint. Yeah. Use it.
because imagine we start talking about forgiveness, that we'll be going on
Oh,
a
heck
whole
yeah.
other tangent, right?
Heck yeah.
So, Nate, I want to say definitely, I appreciate you. I thank you for being on, man. Thank you for your knowledge that
Thank
you dropped. I want you to have the last word. So I want you to definitely, leave
you. Mhm.
us with a word of inspiration, motivation. Have you
Yeah.
see fit. But then also to give us your social media handles and things like that, where we can find you, where we can work with you, so the audience can connect with you.
Yeah.
So while you think about that for a minute, I'm gonna talk to my audience and I'm gonna tell you guys. I told you that I was gonna let you know how you can win $100 from the podcast, and that is by joining our super subscriber contest, right? So, in order to join the contest, you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. And after you've done those three things, you text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. That's all you got to do. You're already listening to the podcast. You're already checking it out. Just go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And then again, subscribe to the YouTube page, to the Facebook page, to the podcast on Spotify. Then text the word WIN, WIN, to 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100 from the podcast. So again, Nate, let me tell you again, I definitely appreciate you. I thank you for being on. Man, dropping all the knowledge, definitely for the acronyms. I love the acronyms. And yeah, all the rest of the information that I'm gonna steal. Thank you.
I know that's right.
So I'm gonna let you have the last word. The floor
Mhm.
is yours.
Yeah. So here's the thing, we're all in this together. And one of the things I love, I love Star Wars. I don't know if anybody else on you, whoever your listeners are that love Star Wars, but I love Star Wars because there's so many deep principles in that movie. But Poe Dameron has been the new character, the new leader character in the series as Disney took over. And he said something very powerful. I think it was in episode 9 in The Rise of Skywalker. He says, the First Order wins by making us think we're alone. We're not alone. Good people will fight for us if we will lead them. Leia never gave up, and neither will we. We're going to show them we're not afraid. What our mothers and fathers fought for, we will not let die. Not today, not ever. We will make our last stand for the galaxy, for Leia, for everyone we've lost. The power of resilience makes ensures that everything that was fought for, that everything we have in this very moment is appreciated with the greatest level of gratitude. And I think that's the best way we can show those who came before us that we can be good stewards of humaning right now.
All right, all right. Give us your social media handles
Yeah.
and website where we
Yeah.
can work
So
with.
you can find me guys at www.theperspectivecoach.us. You can also find me on Instagram at the real Nathaniel Brown. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can actually type in all the LinkedIn stuff and then put The Perspective Coach, and my stuff will come up. I'm also on Facebook. I think it's Nathaniel J. Brown on Facebook, and I'm on TikTok, but I don't really use it. I just use that as an information hub to kind of look at stuff or whatever. But yeah, those are my main places. I mostly hang out on Instagram and LinkedIn. But yeah, just link up with me. I have a calendar on my website that if you want to just sit back and say, hey, you said something on the podcast, I don't know that I have fully wrapped my mind around what you said, just reach out. I'm happy to spend about 5 to 10 minutes to re-explaining a few things. If you're looking for coaching and a speaker, you can also do that stuff there as well. I'm open to all of those opportunities, because the more I'm able to share, the more I am able to receive. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate your time.
No problem. No problem. Can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, again, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And our mission is to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So until next time, you guys be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.